All right, I'm on today with Jen Perelman. She's an attorney running for Florida's 25th Congressional District seat, which is currently held by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Thanks for joining me today, Jen.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's really nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's going to be a pleasure to talk with you. I've taken a look at the website, and I like some of the things that you have made policy priorities. Let's kind of start here. So there's a lot to get into. One of the key priorities for you in terms of this election cycle is affordable housing. And I have a background in mortgage, so this is an issue that's sort of close to my heart. You know, we're at a time right now that's with inflation. A lot of Americans are struggling right now. People are hurting. I'm going to read you a couple statistics here. I mean, right now, housing is unaffordable for half of U.S. renters, right? Harvard released a study recently that showed an all-time high of 22.4 million renters spend about 30% of their income on rent and utilities. 12.1 million people have housing costs that take up more than half of their paycheck. What are your solutions for this issue should you get elected to Congress? How do you plan on addressing this massive crisis that we have?
Yeah, the housing crisis is so broad right now. It affects so many different areas. And the main problem we have is that the handful of companies, your BlackRocks, your Vanguards, your State Streets, are creating an untenable situation for regular people to ever have any semblance of wealth accumulation. And this is not something that is natural. This is not market. This is greed. And this is corporate collusion, whether it's how they pay off Congress, what we incentivize, what we don't incentivize, and just generally how we treat our people. And I am definitely not a housing policy expert. I have a lot of people that are, though. And what I do know is that this has to do with corporate greed. And there is no reason for anybody to have to spend more than a quarter of their monthly income on their rent. That should be the norm. And if you're spending half your monthly income on rent, something is glaringly wrong, and it's not you. Because that is so disproportionate. That is a failure of our economy, and that we service the corporate and we hurt the individual. And I realize that housing very much so is a state function in a lot of cases, but there are so many things that the federal government can do to incentivize the right behavior and disincentivize the corporate greedy behavior and protect people. So this isn't the only area where they don't protect us. This is just one of many. But there is no and if somebody's spending that much money on their rent, that's house poor. Those are the same people that can't afford a $400 emergency. And then that trickles into every other aspect of their life. So the housing affects everything. And without even getting into the houselessness, I'm just talking about people that are housed and how stressed it is to make ends meet in that. There's no protection for renters. There needs to be a tax credit for renters. There's a lot of different things that can be done to help people do better right now. But yeah, no, it's just a matter of siding with the least of these. That's what you have to recognize that the problem is at the top and not at the bottom.
So one of the primary drivers of the crisis is just a lack of supply. And then another key part of this is inflation. You know, that we had massive inflation after the COVID pandemic spending. When Biden got into office, he had some disastrous energy prices that spiked fuel rates and gas prices, which everything has to be transported here. That impacts inflation as well. Now the Fed's trying to raise rates to pump brakes on inflation. Higher interest rates mean higher mortgage payments. You know, that's part of what's fueling this crisis as well. So what's the corporate greed side of this? Because I haven't heard a ton of that in terms of that being responsible for the housing crisis we're seeing right now.
Well, right now, by 2030, it is estimated that 60% of single family homes are going to be owned by those three corporations, State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock. They are manipulating the system so that they will end up having all the inventory. I feel like we're entering into this world where we're all just going to be like serf peasants, living and not being able to afford homeownership and having to be renters. And then all you have to do is remove protections from renters. And then you have slaves, essentially, because if you don't own property and you have to pay rent and there's no rent control, what are you going to do then? It's like getting people really where they're under your thumb when you take away their capability of owning a home. And that's very frightening. And it is also the main way that people transition wealth. So when you're looking at those big corporations that are buying up all the homes, and again, this is definitely not my area of expertise, but there is something very, very non-capitalistic, non-free market, let me say. It is very capitalistic, but it's not exactly what I would call free market, is not what's driving this. It's being driven by a handful of people that are buying up all the homes, and it does affect what they're doing to the market. And as far as inflation, yes, we had supply chain issues. Yes, we did have some things, especially going back to COVID, but there is very much evidence to support the fact that a ton of what we're dealing with really comes down to greed, because a lot of these corporations are making like record profits. So where's that money all going? Like, where's that all go? So I don't necessarily buy that the inflation is just because the economy's hard. No, I don't buy that. There was some of that. There was definitely a bump in that when we had the supply chain issues, but we're well past that now. We're well past that now.
And this sort of goes into another area that you have made a campaign priority, which is ending corporate welfare and the corporate greed that you are seeing. I mean, what do you, I know a lot of times when we talk about these issues, different people mean different things. So when you say ending corporate welfare, what does that mean for you?
It means to me that, let's say in 2008, when Obama or 9 bailed out the banks, that's corporate welfare. When we have people that are struggling to be able to make ends meet, working 3 jobs and then end up in a healthcare bankruptcy, those people aren't getting bailed out. We can't even get some student debt bailed out that would really even be for the usury loans. I'm not even talking about the ones that aren't usurious. I actually had a normal student loan. So we have all of these events taking place for regular people. Nobody's bailing them out. We couldn't even get a $15 minimum wage because of the parliamentarian, but yet somehow we could bail out the banks. We bail out Big Pharma. We bail out all of that. Like, why are we paying for them twice? So, for example, with Big Pharma, so our money, our collective resources in this country pays pharma for their research. We pay, like, that's our resources paying for the research. But then we get raped in this country harder than any other country when it comes to being taken advantage of by a pharmaceutical industry, because our government is bought by them. So they're not protecting us. It is that simple. We are being raped by Big Pharma, and it's being allowed to happen. And the same thing is true in almost every industry. The Big Agri. Big Agri is a complete train wreck. If you want to look at, like, I believe there's 3 or 4 major big beef producers in this country that own everything. And it's just the monopoly. We weren't supposed to have that. That is not free market. What we have, 6 companies or less own 90% of our media. This is, and the only way this happens is through policy that allows it to happen, because we have had periods in our past where people protected the consumers or protected people from these things. That's how I know it's possible. We used to have a high marginal tax rate. We used to have a corporate tax rate. Like, we used to have all sorts of things that protected people and protected businesses from out of control. And those things are gone. And so we're seeing completely unfettered capitalism without any regulation. And it's just not working for the majority of people.
Yeah, and currently, I mean, federal subsidies to U.S. businesses total $100 billion a year. I mean, think of all the things we could do with that money if it wasn't going out to corporate interests.
Why are we paying for them twice? Why is it that, by the way, there are certain companies like Walmart and McDonald's in particular, that when people go and apply for jobs there, they automatically give them the paperwork for food stamps or for WIC or whatever the programs are. That automatically comes with those job applications. If you cannot afford to pay your employees so that we're not paying for them, okay, then you are not a successful business. That should not be allowed to exist. If your employees, and it's automatic. Like, seriously, you go down here to McDonald's and apply for a job, they will hand you the social program applications. How is that okay? And yet McDonald's isn't seeing a hurt. As far as I know, they've been seeing like pretty high profits, and I'm not seeing them pay their employees anymore. So it's about disproportionate effects of what we call free market. It's only free for the people at the top.
So if you were elected to Congress, what sort of policies would you push or bills would you introduce to address those things, maybe address additional issues like barriers to competition that companies are protected from currently?
So, I support the concept of what we call a 21st century economic bill of rights. And it really goes back to what was promised by FDR that would have come through had he even made another term. It's like they got through some of them and then there were these other things. So it's things like you have a right to healthcare. You have a right to housing. You have a right to be able to have affordable banking. You have a right to clean water. You have it is our government's job to protect us for our rights. It is not their job to patrol us, tell us what we can and cannot do. That is not what we need. We need this is all of our resources collectively. So my main thing, of course, is Medicare for all. And if it's hard for people to wrap their brains around it, remember there was a time when there wasn't Medicare for anyone, just like there wasn't public school for anyone. And now we have K through 12 and people are bitching about extending it to college. At some point, there were people saying we shouldn't have school for anybody. And the thing for me is I want to be around healthy, smart people. That's just me. I don't want to be surrounded by unhealthy, stupid people. So for me, when you talk about healthcare education, those are investments. Those are investments. We know that they pay off. We know we spend more on healthcare and have the worst outcomes out of any, like what we would call develop. I hate even using that word, but like, whatever you would call Northern Hemisphere nation, whatever you want to say. And that is not because we don't have the technology. We have amazing healthcare here if you're rich. That's why people come here from all over the place to get amazing healthcare, but it's just not available to everybody. And so my major priority is healthcare. We have more than half of our bankruptcies are from healthcare costs. That's disgusting. That is a broken society. Okay, so we need healthcare, and I do support housing, all sorts of different regulations, whether it's going into homeownership or supporting renters, whether it's offering incentives to state for development, whatever it is that can help. And while we have a lot of housing, but it's not the right housing. They keep building all these live, work, and play places, and I talk about it all the time. There's a really nice couple of new ones in Plantation. None of the people that work in those retail stores can afford to live there. So you're building these live, work, play environments, but the people are still commuting to work in those places. They can't afford that. So the disproportionateness is what we really need to be focusing on in terms of people being able to live where they work. And then my third major priority is I support the idea of a federal job guarantee. I know that it's not like common, but neither was the idea of Medicare for all until like 2015, as when Bernie was in. And my thought is I really want to start putting that out there more than a minimum wage. That if we had a federal job guarantee, we wouldn't need a minimum wage. Because if you offer a living wage through the federal job guarantee, anybody who wants to compete for those workers is going to have to meet it. So
what does that specifically look like from a policy standpoint, though? Because this is a topic I'm not that well versed in.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and there's an entire book about it called "The Case for the Federal Job Guarantee," and it's by Paulina Cherkova. Oh God, I can't pronounce her name. But basically, like, imagine, if you will, that there, instead of unemployment offices, there's employment offices. Okay, so that the job isn't to pay people for being unemployed, but to actually find them productive employment. There is no shortage of things that we need to have done federally. And these things would then be monitored like they are now through the states, through like how you would, instead of unemployment, you'd have employment. But the reality is you're not setting people up to go dig ditches. The goal is to pay people their worth. So, for example, one of the common things that are undervalued is home health care, home health aides that do not get paid anywhere near what they're worth, and yet they're very valuable. How about teachers? Like, there's a lot of things that we don't pay and value what they should be at. But imagine if we had that program. So instead of paying people for not working, we actually paid them for working. You're still paying the people. So instead of getting an unemployment check, you'll just make a paycheck, and there is no shortage of stuff that we need done in this country. FDR did it. It worked, and it worked for a reason, because for the most part, people want to work and take pride in what they're doing. It is true. People take pride when they're treated like decent and have dignity and they're paid for their work. And I think there's no shortage of things to do. Hell, I could come up with projects in this neighborhood for municipal rainwater collection for people, things to administer. There's all sorts of caring types of programs, even art and music and recreation stuff. Let's say somebody is a musician and they're out there donating their time and playing. Let's say they volunteer a youth group. Let's say they're volunteering for a youth group, whatever. With a federal job guarantee, they'd be able to collect a paycheck for what they're doing. So it isn't making people do something they don't want to do. It's recognizing the inherent value in the work that people is doing and compensating them for it accordingly, instead of supporting them for being unemployed.
So you're supporting. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't write it. Like, this is, and I am not the policy wonk, but this is stuff that there are detailed policies on this that do go back to FDR. And even more recently, when you've seen people like Harvey Kaye and Alan Minsky and people really talking about the 21st century economic bill of rights. So there is a way where we can do this and have that, because we've done it before. I refuse to accept that if we were able to do it in 1939 or whenever that was, that we can't do it now.
So your ideal program, it sounds like, would sort of be like having the government be a broker between the private sector business that's looking for employees and the employee who's looking for a job. Not necessarily federally subsidized.
Not for everybody. If you don't need to go into the job guarantee, like not everybody needs it. It'd be like, imagine it's only for people that would need it.
Right.
And then, yes, it does. But it's sort of.
But this isn't the government writing checks to people.
No, it's not the government writing checks to people. It's people collecting paychecks through local, yes, they facilitate it through state and local agencies, and people get paid for their work.
Gotcha.
And it's just, there are ways to do it. And again, I am not the policy person, but there are books written on this and very, very smart people where this can absolutely be done. And again, I know that that's not something, I'm not getting into Congress and doing that. I'm not even going to get into Congress and be able to get healthcare passed with those people. So really what it's about is just being an advocate. That's what it's about. Because I think people place too much emphasis specifically just on the policy aspect, and where we are with Congress right now. If that's all we're caring about, you're a very disappointed person because you're not getting anything done. They just sit there going back and forth on stuff. They can't get out of their own way. All of them, both parties, they're a hot mess. And so to me, the idea is, what about what you do when you're in district? What kind of advocate are you for your people? What kind of service are you providing to your community? These are supposed to be public servants. They're only supposed to be in DC during session. I want people to understand that the legislative aspect of congressional work should not be the only thing that they're doing, and that should not even be the primary focus of what they're doing. And if they were actually serving in their communities, they'd have a whole hell of a better idea what people actually do want if they were cared to know. But that's where most work happens, is local. And that's where things really happen. And when you have the power of you have the platform of federal seat, yes, you're going to command attention to issues. You're going to also be able to bring money home to your district and help your local programs and help that. So for me, as much as I have my opinions and thoughts on federal policy, and I am one of those people that I work out of reason. If somebody presents me something and it's reasonable that it will help the most amount of people, I'm with that. Let's try that. I'm not fighting. I'm not stuck on any policy. I'm throwing out ideas that shouldn't be radical to having a flourishing civilization. That's all I'm doing. But as far as my effectiveness, no one there's going to want to play with me. And I've been very clear, I will work with anyone on any issue that it matters to me. I don't care what side they're on, who they represent. It does not matter. I don't care about their labels. I am running as a Democrat because I'm closer to that than I am to the other. But to be honest, they don't represent me either. So I'm just trying to help regular people. And one of the people we talk about a lot that we really like on our show is Thomas Massie. And the reason that I like him so much, and he and I are very opposed on a lot of things. I mean, he's pretty conservative on a lot of things, but he has integrity. He has honor. He doesn't take corporate money, and he actually is consistent in how he, represents his people. And so those are people I can work with. You know what I mean? I just think if we all kind of use reason, we're smart enough to come up with some good things to help some people. That's all. That's really that's my pitch. Just trying to help some folks.
And I think that's a good place to be in. And so, let me ask you that, just to sort of piggyback on that. And just real quick, if you were in a spot where your constituents wanted you to vote a certain way on a certain bill, but that was sort of opposed to your particular, let's just say, your own political agenda, you're saying you would support your constituents over what you would personally want? Okay. Every
day of the week and twice on Sundays. And what makes me comfortable in doing what I'm doing is that I know that I would say, for me, on all of my issues, the majority of for certain my district, remember, I am in Broward County, Florida, so for certain the majority of my constituents, but I'm in line with the majority of country, whether it's wanting to get out of wars, whether it's supporting a woman's right to choose, whether it's all those issues. And if you support the idea of a representative democracy, then when you're in the minority, you have to recognize you're not getting your way. And I'm okay with that, because for the most part, and that's why I'm comfortable, for the most part, with the exception of capital punishment, I am in line with what the polls say most people want. So I don't have that. Most likely I'm not going to have that compromise, but I absolutely would do what I'm paid to do. Those are our employees. Why do people not understand this? Those are our employees. Literally, those are our employees. So no, I wouldn't. But if I thought I'd be so like contradictory, then I wouldn't feel as comfortable running for the seat, because that would be hard.
Now, you are, because you mentioned foreign policy, so I want to touch on this. You are a Jewish woman, and one thing that separates you from Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's also Jewish, is your stance on the conflict in Gaza, which you've referred to several times as a genocide. You said specifically last week on X, with all due respect, President Biden, the Palestinians are victims of genocide. That is a sharp departure from Debbie Wasserman Schultz and also many within the American political establishment currently.
Yeah, I think that, well, there's two types of people in that. And I said this a lot of times, like you in Congress, there's either people that are being willfully ignorant about what is happening, meaning they have access to the accurate information, but because it contradicts either their own ideology or AIPAC dollars, they're not willing to look at the information. Or they do know and they're lying to you. So every single person in Congress is willfully ignorant or lying. That's it. It's one of those two things. Now, with Debbie, I'm pretty sure she's aware. So I don't know what it is. And again, I've said it before. I don't know whether it's ideological. We were probably, I was raised to be Zionist. I'm assuming she probably was too. But she also has a very, very heavy inducement by AIPAC. So let's not kid ourselves as to what percentage is ideological and what percentage is, just she's on their payroll. But yeah, I was raised to be very Zionist. And so it's taken me a long time to deprogram that, maybe a little over 10 years. But once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And there's too many facts to, again, I'm a person of reason. When I was growing up, wasn't able to Google this. I wasn't able to go be watching what's happening on the ground in places like Gaza and the West Bank. That wasn't possible. But how they're still trying to gaslight us while we're watching it in live time is unbelievable to me. I sit there watching that. I'm like, the 90s called, man. They want their messaging back. You cannot be lying to people that are watching it on their phones. And yet they're still doing it. And they can call it whatever they want to. They can call whatever semantics they want to. What I know is that I believe that a year from now, there will be 2 million dead people in the desert. That's what I believe. Because I honestly don't see how they can undo this now. The chain of events that is set in place with dehydration, malnourishment, all of those things, you can't once you get to a point of malnourishment, you can't just send in food and everyone eats and it's okay. That's not how that works. So we have gotten to the point over there where there's no reversing this. They don't have water. They don't have medical care. They're not getting food. How long are people living like that? And then what? You hope at best some of them might get pushed into the Sinai Desert to live in encampments that will also have no facilities. So yes, well, they're not calling it a genocide because it isn't completed yet. A lot of these people are overachievers. They really like to complete the genocide maybe before calling it one. So maybe in a year from now, they'll be willing to recognize it for what it is. I'm with it right now because they're calling it that. When you refer to people as animals, when you say that you're all in favor of collective punishment, when you're willing to turn off water to an entire population of people, you are demonstrating your intent, as the ICJ found. Again, we are the outliers in this, in terms of our country and what the information and we're putting forth. Us and the UK are like the outliers. The rest of the world sees this for what it is. And we, along with Israel, are going to go down this drain and we're going to be like these pariah states in the world. And it is a liability to us. This is a huge liability to Jewish people, because every time you affiliate this with Judaism, I think you're perpetuating anti-Semitism. So don't be putting my name on that. And I can tell you a lot of Jewish people that do not want to be affiliated with this nonsense in Israel. So it is very important to me for people to understand the difference between Judaism and Zionism. They are completely different things. There are more Christian Zionists in this country than there are Jews in the world. So Zionism and Judaism are not the same thing. You can be critical of Zionism, which came around late 1800s, turn of the century. Judaism's been around for thousands of years. Okay, so Zionism is a new white colonial project. This is a white settler colonial project. And I know that because it wasn't about the Jews. They used the Jews to do it, but the Palestinian Jews got treated like crap. The Palestinian Jews weren't treated like Jews. They got outcast with the rest of the Palestinians. It was the Ashkenazi white Jews, and it still is. It's still like that there. And if you talk to somebody who is a Mizrahi Jew, which I don't know if you're familiar with what a Mizrahi Jew is. So the Mizrahi Jews are the African Jews. Your Moroccan Jews, your mostly Northern African, where you would find like your Muslim populations, but where there's those Jews have historically they're Mizrahi Jews as opposed to the white Ashkenazi Jews. And ever since the beginning of the state of Israel, the Mizrahi Jews have been treated like second-class citizens, still are. At one point, they brought in all the Ethiopian Jews because they needed the numbers to create their majority, but they brought them in there to segregate them. So make no mistake, Zionism is a white settler colonial project wherein they use Jews to justify it. And now once you see it, you can't unsee it, you know?
All right, we got just a few more minutes here. So real quick, so what's your final pitch to any voter who is considering voting for you? I think your primary election is next Tuesday, right? The 19th?
Oh, no. My primary is not until August 20th. We just launched.
Wow, okay. Oh, nice. August. Awesome. So you got plenty of time.
August 20th. I have plenty of time. We haven't even had 1 week yet.
Okay,
and the pitch is, and it really depends on who I'm talking to because there's so many good reasons, right? Like I have so many reasons, but the bottom line is that I want to get rid of the corporate filth and the insider trading and the complete impropriety. And he can only do it one by one. And the person that is sitting in my congressional seat right now was the #1 insider trader of the Democratic Party in 22, according to Unusual Whales. So now, why is my employee making money on the clock and then not doing what we want her to do? So I'm really wanting to take back the House and at least bring a voice to it. Like I said, people like me, they're not going to be wanting me to play in their sandbox. They're not going to want to be friends with me because I'm not playing with them. I'm not going to fall in line just because they say fall in line. I don't work that way. So I'm not going to say that they're going to want to sing Kumbaya and do things with me. But as far as an advocate, and as far as using this platform, and as far as trying to like recreate a new paradigm as to that politics is supposed to be service. And that's our mission on my show, is transforming politics into service. I don't even think they should all be being paid. I think that you should get a stipend during legislative session to be up there. You know, whatever. Yeah, you got to have something to go live up there. This should not be a career. This is absurd. It's absurd that they get a pension. Like so much of this is so distasteful to me that I just feel like somebody do something. Like seriously, somebody that isn't going to just get in and fall in line. Somebody do something. And so I think that we have a really good chance. We got close to 30% in 20 in a pandemic without knowing anything of what we were doing and no name recognition. So fast forward 4 years with a pretty decent sized social media and podcast platform, and some interested benefactors, actually. Sometimes my congresswoman really angers the wrong people. And it only benefits me. And I can just say this, and let me tell you something, this Jewish girl has been brought into the Muslim community here in a way with warmth and love that I've never had from my own people here. Their gratitude and thanks, like for me standing up for them, honestly, if I don't do anything else, I'm good. Like these women, they cry. I get phone calls. And the thing is, unfortunately for my congresswoman, is some of these people are extraordinarily wealthy. And, you know, look, hey, I'm a grassroots person. Most of the time, wealthy people don't reach out and say, how can I help you? That is a new phenomenon, thanks to her. So, you know, she'll have herself to blame because we normally, those types of people, they don't want to help people like me because I'm fighting those people, right? Like in terms of economic justice. Let me tell you, I guess something happens when you start genociding people's family. I guess they just don't take kindly to it. And yeah, so it'll be very interesting this time around. But I would say, guys, we got to get rid of the old school. Enough of the same people sitting there and just like totally profiting off of us. Enough of it. You know, and I would also suggest people, if you look up anything about me, you would be able to find out, I don't want that job. I'm willing to do it as a term of service. I think it's supposed to be a term of service. I don't want a career there. I'm pushing 53. I just bought a camper that's sitting on my friend's property in Georgia, and I know that on August 21st, the day after the primary, I will be in said camper. I don't need this, but I'm willing to do this because it's important. So I think that, and unfortunately, more people aren't in that position where they can. It's very expensive to run for Congress. It is a full-time job. So working people, it's almost impossible. I honestly do not know. That's why we don't have representation, because working people can't get into Congress because they won't get the money and they can't do the campaign. It's set up to keep us out. And I am someone who has a sort of a privilege and a platform where I can get in, maybe, because I don't have to work and all that. And if I can get in and do something, that's what I can do. I'm just going to go in there and help people for as long as I can, and then find my way onto my camper, man. Because this is, I didn't choose this. I was asked to do this in 20. So just so you know, like, this was never my ambition.
Awesome. We got about 30 seconds here. Just real quick, where can people find you if they want to yell at you or support you?
Yeah. So we are at gen2024.org. And it's probably any day now, it'll be fully up and running. So just keep note of it because it's still being worked on right now. But we're on social media at Gen FOR for Congress 2024. I believe that we're that on Twitter and Instagram. I think on Facebook, I'm still at Jen Perelman. But yeah, and please, guys, the support is incredible. We need $10,440 just to get on the ballot in Florida. Second most expensive state in the country next to Arkansas. I don't know why, but it is.
That is
and
crazy.
And so we have to pay, right. So that's why we need the influx, even though my thing isn't until August.
Okay. Gotcha.
So help us out, people. Spread the love.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you get some support, and I would like to, since we have a little bit more time, I want to get with you on a different session where we have a little bit more time and unpack some of your other policy platforms. So maybe we can get that set up.
Absolutely. I'll come back anytime. I mean, I have no idea what kind of hateful comments I'll get from your people. I don't know. When I went on with Tim, when was that? It's like 3 or 4 years ago. I wasn't reading the chat, but apparently I was called Communist Karen a shit ton. So I'm fine with that. You can call me Communist Karen. I'll be that. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to help people. Yeah. I have no agenda. And it's just that I think that's very foreign to people, actually. I think it's a very foreign concept to people, and it's hard for them to believe it. And I do recognize that. But yeah, I'm just me.